Hi everyone, welcome back. And today I am solving another question in the SQL 50 medium series. And let's get into another question. So, the question that I will be solving today, so I have to work with just one table here, which is logs table, and I see that we have to work with two columns. ID is the primary key for this table, and it's also an auto increment column which starts from 1. Okay, and then we have to find the numbers that appear at least 3 times consecutively, and I can return the result in any order. Okay, let's look at the data. So it's ID num column, so it's an auto increment which starts from 1, so it's a sequential number 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, and we see that the number 1 it appears 3 times. That's the criteria that we have for this question. And yeah, let's get into it. Let's start by writing what we need in our output. So our output will be one column which will be the number, but what number? We need number which appears 3 times consecutively, right? Whatever the spelling. Okay, and then we can return the result in any order. And it specifically says that the ID column is an auto increment column, so we know when it starts from 1, so we know so 1 2 3 4 5, it's an auto increment. Okay, so I'll just select from logs table. We have to work with only one table here, so we have ID and num. Just quickly running to look the data. We have it. So how we can find the rows which or the rows or the values that appear 3 times in a repeated rows is I can, like, once I start by looking at my first row, I have to just make sure that the next row and the one below it, the first 3 rows, they should have the same value for the num, right? That's what will give me my output. So how I can look at it is I can use the lead function. It's a Windows function which essentially looks at the next row. So if I do lead num and give it 1, like to look right the next row, let's say as over, and I'll just order by, so we'll sort it by ID as my next row, and then I have to also look at the third row. I'll say num and 2, so I'm essentially asking it to look 2 rows below. So I'll again order it by ID as my next 2 row. Not the best name, but yeah. Okay, if I have to show you, just run it quickly. See ID 1, we have a number 1, then next row we know is 1, which we see here, next row is 1, which we see here. Now if you look at the 2 ID, next row is 1 1, next row is 2, which is 2, and essentially the same thing for all other rows, and the only row that meets this criteria is the first one. So we knew the number 1 is what actually repeats 3 times consecutively. So now how to extract that row is I have to just say that my number column, it is wherever my number column is equal to my next row, and that is equal to the next 2 row. That's what gives me my output. So I'll just put it under a CD, and I'll select mine because I just need the num column. So I'll select num from my CTE list from log, and I'll put this condition where my num is equal to next row, and my next row is equal to my next. You can give it any name, it's not just the best name. And I'll just give this one the same output name as this, and I'll just run it and see. Yep, so it gives me 1, which is essentially the answer that we were looking for. And I'll also put this distinct, because there could be multiple rows, just not in this case, but there could be multiple ones. And we know distinct, we have the just run it and submit it. Yes, so we have our answer. And then this other way to do it, like not using CTN, without using the Windows function, I can just show you quickly. Just remove this. What we can actually, the other way is through self join. So what we can do is select, I didn't have to remove the whole query, right? Let's remove this. So remove this. I have my logs column, sorry, my logs table and L1. I'll do a join, because we like for this problem particular, we have to compare each row with the other row, right, to get the number that is like the num value, which is equal to its subsequent row. So we can join the table to itself on the condition says if my L1. So since in the lead function also that's doing the same thing, it's Windows function, it's also looking at the next row. And with self join also, what you can do is id, when you do id plus 1, and this only works because our id is an auto increment column, right? So my next id, like id plus 1, it will be 2, 2 plus 1 it will be 3, 3 plus 1 it will be 4. So this only even this particular code and the previous one, they both work only they work only when your id is an auto increment column. So you're essentially looking at the next row and saying that if it's equal to your id, so if your id 1 and the next table, it's just a copy of this, it's essentially the logs table. And if 2, if it's equal to 1 id, and just looking for in the same table if your num is equal to L2.num. So these two rows will match that criteria. And then since we need 3 rows, so we have to join another, again the same table, and say L2 id dot plus 1. Then you're looking at the second row and saying that 2 plus 1, if it's 3, is that number equal to this number? You're essentially doing the same thing as lead, but here we're just doing it with the self join instead of the Windows function. You're saying my L3 dot id, and then my L2 dot num, it should be L2 dot num, and if it is, that's the id that I want. Oh, not the id but the num. I'll just say L1 dot L3. What happened? Object, invalid object name L2. Oh, I didn't say logs. Join logs. And yep, just the name. As this, and I'll just put a distinct as this and accept it, and I'll submit it. Yep. And this code, the both codes, they are essentially doing the same thing. In the previous one we did it through lead function, which is a Windows function. In the second one we just did a self join to the table, and we did it 2 times because we are looking for, because for the rows consecutively, if there were more, then we obviously, it's not the most efficient code, but since for this particular question that's what they wanted, and of course also the primary key, the id column, is an auto increment column. That's why all of these code works, and I think this works for this question perfectly. So yeah, that's it for this video, and thank you.